Machinima, goddammit.
Oh, hey, my name's Chris Burke. I am writer, director, producer, and host of The Spartan Life, which is a machinima talk show that's been going since mid-2005, and we have a lot more in the can that we're ready to edit and put up, and we're very excited for that. For whatever reason, I say machinima. Occasionally I'll catch myself saying machinima. I blame the YouTube channel Machinima and machinima.com for a lot more than just that.
Oh, I blame him for everything. I blame him for the reasons why I'm late to school. Like, that's Machinima, goddammit.
The original conception of the Spartan Life, it was called the Spartan 117 Dialogues back then, for about a month. And the original idea was that it was sort of more like an art project, more like something that we would, upload to rhizome.org or something like that, like an art site, as a kind of a work of weird video, some kind of strange video art. And so from the beginning, I kind of thought of it as something, just an outlet, just something that I could use to talk about and wallow in the things that I thought were excellent. And the funny thing is that, like, the format of the whole thing changed. It became more of a kind of a commercial, not commercial, but like a little bit, like I based it a little bit more like on a TV show eventually. By the time it came out and the public saw it, it had a format where there was, like, a dance segment, and there were some comedy skit type things, and it was kind of a parody of something like Space Ghost or something like that. But what didn't change is that I still insisted that I just choose the guests based on my whim and not on any. I mean, people were suggesting guests left and right, and a lot of them I was like, "Oh, that's cool, that's a good idea," but I kind of want to interview this person, and maybe somebody you've never heard of, but you should probably hear of them. And that's probably pretty much stayed the same throughout. And I mean, I guess we definitely, I have to say, we definitely did our work on the backs of other machinima giants from back in the day, like Red versus Blue, Rooster Teeth, of course. They are somebody that I admire greatly. I've been very lucky to have met those guys, and they're super nice.
Oh, you actually met them?
Yeah, back then, they weren't quite the hyper, rock stars that they are today. I think they'd laugh at my assessment there. But they were, we would basically show up at the same, machinima festivals.
Nice.
And I remember, being in Melbourne, Australia, and with Frank Delario from the Ill Clan, who were another one of my absolute
apartment
heroes.
hunting.
Yeah, right. Back in the day, Frank and Matt and the guys from the Oak Clan were definitely heroes of mine back then, and they were an early interview for us as well. But I was with them, and I was with Bernie from Rooster Teeth, and just got a lot of time to hang out and talk and drink and have fun. And it was just really nice getting to know him. I had met him a couple years before that in New York at a machinima festival. Excellent people. Machinima is full of really cool people, and I feel really privileged to be part of that whole scene.
When you try to put something together, you have an idea, but then the idea evolves, it changes. So did it stay an outlet, or did it become something more?
It really did change, and I think because I have a number of different outlets. I'm a musician, composer, video artist, machinima maker, filmmaker. This Spartan Life is strangely accessible for me. It's the most accessible thing I've ever done. And by accessible, I mean, like, the average person could tune in, check it out, and get something from it right away. That esoteric nature of my creativity is definitely in there, and I think it's fairly clear. It happens. I can't really help it. It's like I try to make it more accessible, and I can't really make it any more accessible than it is, because I always get pulled into some really bizarre, like maybe a strange guest. Like Malcolm McLaren was a pretty odd choice. I mean, this is a guy that He was the founding manager of the Sex Pistols, right? So a punk rock legend, right? British punk rock legend, and also just like a kind of amazingly intelligent and well-spoken human being who had been around and seen and done so much, and and it was, by some estimations, he's probably was way past his prime when or his professional prime when I did that interview, but he was still making amazing stuff. People just didn't know about it as much.
How was it being in the shoes of not only producer but writer and director? Because like just the sound of it is intimidating.
All of it is fun, and when something's fun, you don't really think about how hard it is as much.
So when you say like you were doing an episode.
Mm-hmm.
Did you actually have to rewrite something if it didn't work or did you like improv something in there? How did you go about situations where you were stuck in an episode?
A lot of things happen in game that you do not predict, you cannot predict, and you do not expect, and it makes it better. You have to kind of, and sometimes I'll on the spur of the moment I'll come up with something. Okay, hey, do that again, but do this, or I'll just go with whatever happens and be like, this is amazing. So, in post-production, I'll add things occasionally.
How do you manage those crazy situations?
It's changed over the years. I can tell you that. The guys who've been working with me since the beginning will tell you I used to get really angry. Like, I used to scream at people. It was like, stop it! What? You're ruining it! I just didn't get that made it more fun. I mean, I got it, but I still was just frustrated by the fact that I had planned it a certain way. They wouldn't let me do it that way. And over the first year or so of making the show, it slowly dawned on me that it's much funnier and much better if I let all that stuff just intrude on the interview and that's what people want to see. Actually, it's always been fun to kind of allow that stuff to intrude on the action to the point where it's just completely ridiculous.
Yeah, go ahead and tell us, how was Marty O'Donnell shot with this rocket launcher? Was it spot on?
Oh yeah, he hit him with the kid was just standing on the edge of the building, not expecting to get shot at, and he said, "Who is that, Warrior 3000?" And just Jesus, I think I spent about 3 hours in game with Marty. That was amazing, and most of it was the first time he was like, just, I'm available. I'll make myself available. I love this. Let's do it. So the first night we did it with everybody in the game, and the second night we got back together and just got his voice. I just wanted to get a couple of extra questions to throw in there. And it was just him and me and my son, who at the time was 10 years old. Right. So Marty said, "Oh, your son's here. Great. And so how old is he?" And I said 10. He was like, "Oh man, wow, that's really young for Halo." And then he shot him.
Wait, who shot who? Who shot who?
And my son was like, "Oh, that's great. I was shot by Marty O'Donnell."
Jeez. Oh yeah. Man, Marty's got a dark sense of humor.
Yeah, he's got a dark sense of humor. He's an interesting guy. And anyway, so that was a really good experience because he was so supportive, man. In the beginning, we wouldn't have gotten anywhere if it wasn't for him. That was definitely I mean, we had already kind of hit G4 TV and stuff like that, which was excellent. But I think that's how it got to him. I think he saw it on G4 or something and said, "Hey, wait a minute, this is the game that I did. I'm the audio director of. I want to be part of this." Are you all New Yorkers, or are you all over the place?
Well,
oh, nice.
Most of us live in New York.
Laura's in Canada.
Yeah.
Okay. That's far. But I have friends
it's
in
close
Canada.
to New York. It's like
Actually, yeah, it is.
Toronto is like right near New York.
Yeah, I love Toronto, man. Toronto is a really good game city too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, one of the other things that I do is a performing duo called Foci and Loci, and we do live video game, I guess you would call it game art. Some people call it game art. It's we use Little Big Planet 2 to build these kind of sound stages where we kind of control these instruments, like music, sort of mechanical musical instruments built inside the game, and we perform on them. And
that's cool.
Like I said, esoteric tastes.
I can't wait for Little Big Planet 3.
Oh man, yeah, I know.
Mhm.
It's. I wish it was out now so I could use it in this performance in Montreal. But yeah, November I think, right?
Yeah.
I believe it's November.
Before this Spartan Life, were you much into the machinima or just art game scene?
Within like 2 years of kind of finding out about machinima, maybe a year and a half of finding out about machinima, and being interested in video games in that way, I started making the Spartan Life. So it was the first thing I did in that area. However, I was already doing Game Boy music, chip music, since like around 2000, 2001. And so that kind of opened me up to the possibility that you could take a video game and make art with it in some way.
Who's your favorite?
That's a hard one. I mean, Caboose, I guess. Caboose's character suddenly changed. And I've talked to Bernie about this, and those guys don't see it. They're like, he didn't change, he's the same. And everybody else on the forum was like, what happened to Caboose? Why is he even stupider than he used to be?
I keep hearing that. I was rewatching the series last week just for some inspiration while editing my own machinima, and it came to me like I saw he was a lot brighter when he was first deployed, and the story goes, he's the noob, he's a new guy, but he's a lot smarter than he is later on.
Yeah, I think they just went for the comedy. They just pushed it. They're like, this is who he is. Let's go further. And that makes sense because apparently they're very successful. I think they must have done something right, many things right. And that's probably one of them. But yeah, I remember like the earlier episodes, he was dumb, but he wasn't a complete idiot, and eventually he just became like, like just completely lost in every conversation. Favorite episode, hands down. I don't remember what it's called, but the one where they're inside Caboose's head. Do you know that one? They're inside his brain.
I kind of remember it. What was the how did it go?
Amazing. I can't even remember like the I mean the plot back then in the early days was so completely convoluted. Like if you missed one episode, you'd be like, what the hell is going on? But if you watched it, you were like, yeah, this makes sense, sort of, and it was just funny, so it didn't matter. But somehow they all ended up inside Caboose's brain, and it's this big. It was what was the name of the map? God, Halo fans are gonna kick me for this for not remembering.
No.
It's that map in Halo 1 where you know what? They remade it in Halo 2 and it was called Tombstone. And I can't remember, or maybe Tombstone was the original one. I can't remember now. But it's basically you're in there and it's a bunch of these weird half pillars that are just standing up in this big room. And they just kind of cut off halfway up. And then, anyway, but they shot it in there. And it just is perfect because it looks like, I don't know, a neural network somehow. But the great thing about it is like they're talking, Church is going over and talking to all of the people inside Caboose's head, which are the people from Red versus Blue, but Caboose's idea of them, right? So he goes over and talks to Church, like Church talks to Caboose's idea of what Church is, and Church is saying like, oh, Caboose is he's so wonderful, he's so great, and he's my friend, and the real Church says, friend? Why would you want any friends? It just waters down the experience of being Church. Like it's just the whole thing is really great, and he thinks that the Sarge, who has like a southern accent, right? Sarge, he thinks that he has a pirate accent. So in Caboose's brain, the Sarge that's in there has a "Arr, shiver me timbers" kind of, like.
Could you tell us a little bit about what you do outside of machinima?
Just basically audio production, sound design, and music composition. Because I've done pretty much anything that's involved with audio, including write music, record bands, set up live events with sound gear, run a mix of a band, a live band, voiceover recording, audiobooks, sound design for film, sound design for videos and the web. So that's my company is Damien L Inc. And after Damien Lacedaemon from the Spartan Life, I had a company before that. But this is my current company, and a lot of it is sound design. I've done a bunch of soundtracks for very small video games, mostly back in like the 90s. CD-ROM games I did a lot of back then. and I've done a couple of downloadable games, and a lot of audiobooks. That seems to pay the rent better than almost anything, because it's a lot of hours that I can bill for. Voiceover generally is kind of a relatively easy job for a sound engineer, and you can actually make pretty good money if you keep your studio booked all the time. So I did that for many years. I still do that part-time from my home.
What makes a good machinima?
Imagination. Especially any new art form, you're going to see a lot of the same thing done over and over, people imitating each other. The pieces that break that mold, or break the many molds that we've already seen, impress me. I've only seen a couple of really good dramatic machinima. I've seen a lot of good comedic machinima. I think it's much easier to do comedy in machinima, but I'd really love to see something that was really dramatic and really held my attention in machinima, because it's hard, because there's just not the facial expression that you need for drama generally. So I'd like to see that. I have a feeling with Source Filmmaker we'll see a lot more of that, because you can really do blend shapes and stuff to get more complex facial expressions.
Do you do any dramas with machinima? I've seen like voiceovers of The Division, and they're pretty cool.
I haven't actually. I've done only comedy. I think I've done a couple of different comedies that have not actually seen the light of day, that were maybe a little bit more complex than the Spartan Life. I would like to. I feel like it's very hard to do drama in machinima, and that's why I really would like to see a really good one. You can make, abstract art in machinima, you can make comedy in machinima, but it's just hard to get that, to not have the range of emotions and facial expressions that you need for drama. That makes it hard. And the people who have done it, that are good at it, like people like Ricky Grove, I've seen stuff he's done, and a handful of other people, I'm always kind of in awe of what they do.
When making your first machinima, what made you decide to go with Halo 2? Were there other games that maybe you were also interested in, but you decided to pass on? Like, what put Halo 2 over the edge for them?
As one cynical commentator to another, Eric. No, I think it was. It presented itself to me. I think I saw Red versus Blue, and I thought, this game looks really interesting. Look how deep into the 3D space you can go in this game. These maps are huge. And I just wanted to get that game just for that. And then I found out that my kids were really into it. They were like, yeah, get that game. It's so good. Yeah, I want to play that game. I want to play that game. So I got it. And the three of us were playing it. Like, my daughter and my son and I were playing it. And I have to tell you, my daughter beat the hell out of both my son and I regularly. I guess it was just her age at the time. I don't know. But she was really good at it. But I think I just got to know that game and thought, as I was playing it, I just kept thinking, wow, there's so many cool things you could do with this.
What are your future plans as of today?
Oh, good, yeah. Well, I've become a very busy man. I'm teaching, and I'm making music occasionally, and I'm. But my main endeavors right now are this Spartan Life, which is still a big part of my life, and I hope that it's about to become a bigger part of my life, because we are relaunching the site this week, with a store and with the ability to sell merch and finance the show, which is something we have not been able to do, by the way, all these years. For 8 years, I was financing the show just by my audio work, and I didn't even take donations. I mean, this was just literally me taking the money I made from work and dumping into the Spartan Life. And in the early days, it was, I was paying everybody on my crew, like a real salary. And at a certain point, I realized I can't keep doing this because I can't get the rights to the IP in order to make merchandise. And when it went over to 343, not that Bungie was against it, Bungie was totally for it, But the whole thing, the whole time, was getting the lawyers to take the time to write up a contract that would work for everybody. And I can completely understand why that was so hard for Microsoft, because they're a very big company, and I did not represent, an entity that would be making tons of money for them. It was a fairly quirky project. But when I went to 343, the people that I knew there that had been there with Bungie since the beginning decided that this was something that should happen, and I am eternally in their debt for that. They made the contract happen, and I now do have the ability to make DVDs, T-shirts, et cetera, et cetera. So,
Nice.
I would, this is really the thing that I really want to do more than anything, is make this Spartan Life. It's kind of a perfect project for me.
Yeah.
It's somewhere between the fine art world and a kind of more accessible, crazy mashup of talk show and video game and, whatever. So I'm very hopeful that will, continue to be a thing in my life. And it completely depends on our viewership, really. So I'll be all about that for the foreseeable future. However, I am spending a little bit of time making new work with Foci and Loci and performing with Foci and Loci. I do really enjoy doing that, and it is absolutely much more in the art world than it is in, the kind of accessible internet video world.
Yeah.
But those two things are kind of the things I'm most excited about right now.
What kind of art tools do you use, like, to do your art? Like, do you have like a tablet, or you just like what programs also?
I did. It's funny you asked that, because I started before anything. When I was in high school, I wanted to be a comic book artist. And I started by drawing, and I just pencil or rapidograph pens. They probably have fancier names now, but basically very fine point ink pens. And I really wanted to be underground comic book artist. But I really haven't had the time to do that in a long time. And it's sad, because I pick up pen and paper every now and then, and I start drawing, and I'm like, wow, 15-year-old me is trying to get out, and it's not working, So but the thing I did come to understand with old age and wisdom is that an artist is any creative outlet that you have. It doesn't have to be drawing. It doesn't have to be music. It doesn't have to be video, or it can be, your personality can be your art. I mean, there's so many ways to express your creativity. And I feel like all of my projects are various expressions of those things. So my tools tend to be pretty eclectic. So, I mean, I guess Little Big Planet is probably the most creative tool that I use right now. I think it's amazingly creative. And you can actually draw in it, you're more like kind of painting shapes, but you can actually, make things from scratch in Little Big Planet. But I also use, when I'm making music, I use Pro Tools, and I use a Game Boy. And when I'm writing, I use a text editor. My main point is that I think of art as pretty much anything creative that I do. And I think it took me a long time to get to that point. And it took me a long time to accept that I was, quote, an artist, end quote, because it's sort of like, well, I'm doing this weird stuff, and I don't know if it's art, whatever. It's just stuff I like to do. But that's what art is. Stuff you like to do.
Exactly.
What's your favorite game?
Portal 2 especially. I'm actually both of them equally really love the indie game world. And I do think that those in a lot of ways are better than the AAA games, but they're just really different than the AAA games. They have a whole different thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I agree.
Things, like Papers, Please, and there's just so many weird, really interesting games. What's the word I'm trying to think of? I can't remember the name of it. Where it's all in silhouette, and you're that little boy running to look for his sister.
Oh, Limbo?
Yeah, Limbo. Limbo's amazing. I absolutely love it. It's really simple, but I just think it's beautiful. It's so, I don't know, evocative artistically. I played one just recently, actually, at a indie game arcade, and it was called Push Me Pull You.
Is that a game of like two guys trying to play a table tug of war?
What? You guys trying to play table tug of war.
It is. That's weird that you say that because it is a tug of war game, but it's definitely not cute guys. It's these really weird worm-like creatures.
What games have you been playing, Tina?
Yeah, right. I don't know. Yeah.
I watched the YouTube video.
Okay, so it's probably cute guys talking about Push Me Pull You. It's an amazing game. I just played it the other night, and it's really interesting to look at. It's these kind of long two-headed worms, like a head on each end, and there's two of them, and there's a ball in the middle, and it's like a court, and you have to like pull, extend the worm or shrink the worm to circle the ball and pull it into your court.
Cool. I think I'm more interested in that cute boys one though. No,
Yeah.
Oh, do you use mods for your machinimas?
I did in the early days of the Spartan life. I found some ways to do things like get rid of the HUD and, do some crazy things where you could put, 1 billion wrecked cars in your level and stuff like that. And they didn't like it. Bungie didn't like it, and Microsoft didn't like it. They liked it aesthetically. They thought it was cool, but they were worried that it would kind of especially like when I showed how to get out of the map, which I did in a couple episodes, it basically undermined the multiplayer gaming, because if everybody knew how to get out of the map, everybody would just be up there like, sniping from out of the map, and it would ruin the game completely. So they were like, please don't do that. So I stopped doing it in Halo. But I love mods. Especially love glitches. Glitches are the most fun thing in the world.
Do you use mods for like artistic purposes for the machinimas?
Yes, definitely. Yeah. And actually, the funny thing is now I finally got to use some of the really cool Halo 2 glitches that I had found that I couldn't use back then because they didn't want me to. But they don't care about Halo 2 because it's not online anymore, so I can do whatever I want with that. So anyway, glitches are great and mods are excellent. All right, guys. Thanks a lot.